I was wondering as you were talking, like what your experience was in getting an agent. Like, was it hard? Was it that sort of scattergun approach and quite a hard graft to get one, or how did it work for you?
Yeah, I think so. I had the experience of not knowing anybody in publishing, having this book and kind of not really knowing what to do about it. And this was in the days when they used to publish, they probably still do publish the big compendiums of like every agent who is openly looking for queries that year. In the United States, I think it's called the Writer's Digest Guide to Literary Agents. And I went through and I flagged everybody for my relevant genre. And my family will laugh at this, but I power ranked all of the agents. And I basically went through and cold emailed people. And it's a long process. And, learning to do even that was required a lot of sort of reading and education and all of those things. So I still have the file folder of all my rejections. And I should go through one day and count all of my rejections, because what I did was I power ranked people. And my agent was in my top 3. So that was good. I was working on the right path. Little did I know. But I basically went through and I prepared and sent out 5 queries to sort of the people who I think these are the best fit for me in terms of, what they're talking about, the type of, I was looking for people who were looking at long-term careers. That's always been really important to me because it took about 10 years for it to happen, but I wanted to quit my day job and write full time. That was my goal. And so I wanted to make sure I was reaching out to people who I thought would be taking that into consideration. So I sent out the first 5 queries, quickly got rejections from a few people. And just basically every time I get a rejection, I'd send out a new batch of queries. If there were any revise and repeat requests, I kind of filed those away. Most of them for me, though, were just straight rejections. But the ones who did say yes, fortunately, were my top 2. One of whom, again, is my agent now, and it was, in the days where everything was done on physical paper. So I had to, package up my little query bundle with my first 100 pages that she had requested, send that off to her. And then she requested the full manuscript. And so it was a bit of a process to get there. But it was one that, I'm sure, I'm sure if I look at some of the query versus the agent I was querying, I'd see, oh, okay, if it was a very swift rejection, like they either really aren't representing that anymore, or, they've got that on their list and they're looking for other things. So I tried to think of it as not personal as much as possible. And some days that was easier than others. But again, I'm a big proponent of, if you're looking for an agent, finding the right fit is so important. So it's not necessarily about getting an agent. It's about getting the right agent for you, because ultimately you're hiring them and you're paying them ultimately when you do sell a publishing contract. And I think that's important to remember.
Yeah. In that process, did you have to do some rewriting of the manuscript itself, that first manuscript, or was in that first sort of tranche, you got a yes?
I got a yes. I was lucky. Now that book never sold. So the subsequent process of trying to get the book sold, it did go through rewrites, and it did go through, maybe if I focus on this aspect of it, it will be the right fit for an editor. And I just got rejection after rejection. So I always tell that story to people who ask about sort of, I'm really serious about trying to get published. What should I know? And it took me 4 or 5 years, I think, to actually go from being agented to being published. And then from then, it was a different story, and my career sort of went in different directions. But it definitely took time, and it took some rewriting, and it took some frustration. But I think my big thing is always keeping the faith and just trusting that this is something that you want to do. Did you you said you had a contact and a friend?
Yeah, it sounds like that was a sort of starting point even for the idea. And actually, weirdly, I had a very good contact, a New York agent, before I'd even really put the idea down on paper. So I sent him, I think it was a very lengthy, like overly lengthy synopsis, which he then made positive noises. There was no commitment there, but he he was like, this sounds like it's going to be good. And that was enough sort of encouragement for me to go, all right, writing fiction, what does that look like? And then start writing this enormous book. But then at the sort of other end of the writing process, like having something ready, I suppose, there was definitely a kind of progression towards a yes. And, I get some cold no's. I definitely had a conscious thought that you don't want to kind of burn all your bridges at once. If it's not good enough, you don't want to have found every agent in the market that you can think of and sent out that a query or whatever, because then they're not going to look at it again. So it was like you pushing it out in tranches. And the first, I think I got some sort of interest in the idea, but not, and then they'd see the first few chapters and go, less interested now. So I'd take that. I was like, right, okay, I've got to work on the beginning. So there was quite a lot of push and pull, but actually what was nice was that the agents, people were basically very kind. I mean, yeah, fine, you got some flat out rejections, but those that were sort of intrigued by the idea would give you, more than just one shot. And there were a couple that gave me 2 or 3 and then said no. And then ultimately what I realized I had to do was sort of go away and seriously rewrite this manuscript. But one of the ones who was kind of had me on the simmer, as it were, once I'd done that, gone back, given it to him, he was like, I mean, it literally was overnight, I think. He sort of got back to me and said, quick, yes, I want you. So I think it was a real experience of like, this is the, this is like the sort of, these are the gatekeepers of the industry. Just my own personal experience. When I got my own work was of a standard, it got let through into the next stage, as it were. So that was quite an interesting lesson for me, I think. And I'd say to our listeners, I guess, just, a lot of it is about perseverance from you. I think people are looking for that next big thing. So there's a lot of sort of favor. There's a kind of favorable attitude on the receiving end. They want you to be the next great thing, or next big discovery. So, be encouraged by that, but at the same time, don't be discouraged by the fact that you don't get it first time, or you have to, it's quite a journey to get to the point that someone's actually going to say yes.
Well, I think that's given us a lot to think about, and hopefully some good insight for everybody who has listened and watched along with us. Absolutely. I think the message is be encouraged and keep going, keep trying. Thanks for watching this clip from the History Quill podcast, all about writing and publishing historical fiction. If you want to find out more about the topics discussed, check the description for a link to the full episode and the episode page on our website, where you can access a range of relevant resources. You can also join our email list to receive new podcast episodes and more content for historical fiction writers. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and switch on notifications.